last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. Our top story this week. In New York, CPS agents want to make it a felony for you to beat them up. In California this week, the news media gets its first chance since the 1960s to watch proceedings in the state's children's court. Indiana's child protective industry says it's trying to keep kids in their own homes longer before throwing them into foster care. In Connecticut, the child protective industry decides to change the way they respond to child abuse allegations by weeding out the low-risk calls and only sending out the CPS agents on the high. And Connecticut lawmakers also consider changes to the child abuse register that would allow low-risk and rehabilitated offenders the opportunity to have their names removed from the database. The head of Illinois' child protective industry is crying about heavy caseloads for CPS agents, while the Illinois lawmakers debate whether or not the child protective industry should release child death records to the media. In Utah, the House passes a bill that would allow additional protections for parents who face having their children snatched by CPS agents. And in Kentucky, the House approves a bill to license social workers. In Arizona, former CPS agents are coming forward and explaining why they are quitting in droves. And as it turns out, it's because the pay sucks, they can't handle the stress, and because they screw with so many families on a regular basis, they say that there is too much work. The governor of Virginia signs a bill that would require women seeking abortions to undergo an ultrasound first. And the state of Michigan sets up its own toll-free child abuse hotline. In Illinois this week, a study reveals that African American students in Chicago public schools are disciplined much more harshly than their white or Latino classmates. In North Dakota, hundreds of Native American children are removed from their homes every year, and one is looking for his long-lost brother. The Missouri Senate passes a bill that bars race from being considered in adoptions of foster kids, and another study reveals that 77% of abuse allegations made by mothers in child custody battles with their exes are determined to be unfounded. The state of Minnesota puts forth a bill to allow schools to use dangerous prone restraints against special needs kids for another year for more study. Minnesota Representative Michelle Bachmann is claiming that Obama's healthcare reform will lead to the government controlling how many kids you can have. A New Jersey legislature wants all babies in that state to have paternity tests. And presidential candidate Rick Santorum wants to require single mothers to submit to government paternity tests or else cut off their welfare benefits. The state of Texas has begun investigating more than 3 dozen healthcare providers who prescribed large quantities of psychiatric drugs to children. In Florida, thanks to the murder of a 10-year-old adopted girl who was failed by the child protective industry, CPS agents are going to get a $4,000 a year pay raise. And Virginia cuts foster care reimbursement rates for special needs kids. In Norway this week, the 2 Indian parents who had their kids snatched by Norwegian CPS agents are saying that they were taken for eating too much chocolate. And although the kids are supposed to be given to their uncle in India, delayed paperwork seems to be holding up the process. Iran promotes the concept of strengthening family foundations in order to keep children safe and promote children's rights. In Ireland, a survey reveals that 6 out of 10 adults would not rat their friends or neighbors out to the child protective industry. In New Zealand, a social worker tries to appeal his conviction of indecent assault against a kid in a boys' home, and that is dismissed. And Moldova passes a law for the mandatory castration of child sex offenders. In Australia, a Senate inquiry into the nationwide practice of forced adoption wraps up with the government acknowledging that thousands of newborns were wrongfully stolen from their young unmarried mothers from the 1940s right up through the 1980s. And Canadian mothers are now coming forward and claiming that they were forced to give up their babies for adoption too. In England this week, the government plans to speed up the adoption process and start allowing white couples to adopt black kids. British councils are going to start getting extra cash for getting more moms to breastfeed and improving parental skills. British police are looking for a fake social worker who is accused of sexually assaulting a 2-year-old boy. And not only did the biological father of the late baby P get £75,000 in damages after a newspaper wrongfully said that he was convicted of having sex with a 14-year-old girl, but a British foster parent gets sent to jail for having sex with a different 14-year-old girl. In entertainment news this week, supermodel Christie Brinkley is throwing her family under a bus in a public custody battle, according to her ex-husband Peter Cook. The father of Halle Berry's baby has his child endangerment case dropped, and MTV's Teen Mom star Amber Portwood fails a piss test. In Oregon this week, a foster parent is being held on $1 million bail after holding a 1-year-old foster child in a scalding hot bathtub. And as it turned out, this guy shouldn't even have been a foster parent because he had a domestic violence conviction back in 2008. In New Jersey, a CPS agent gets busted for falsifying her timesheets by claiming that she was working at 2 jobs at the same time. And in Oklahoma, a fired CPS agent is accused of stealing $3,700 from 3 disabled foster kids. In Texas, a CPS agent is arrested for paying a teenager to have sex with him. In California, a 15-year-old kid pleads not guilty to strangling his foster parents. 2 Bakersfield foster parents who killed a 3-year-old girl then fled the country with their biological children, leaving the girl's brother behind sleeping in his crib back in 2010, are arrested in Mexico. And a California CPS agent gets busted for trying to pick up a hooker. In Alabama this week, a 7-month-old is recaptured after his mother tries to rescue him from foster care. In Florida this week, 2 lesbians are taking on the state's egg donor laws as they battle for custody of their daughter, where one donated an egg that was fertilized by an anonymous sperm donor and implanted into the other. Florida's child protective industry is being sued by a father after failing to protect his kids who were killed in 2010 by the mom's new husband. In North Carolina, a judge considers terminating the parental rights of a Mexican immigrant after he was deported. In Tennessee, the adoptive parent who sent a 7-year-old boy alone on a plane back to Russia has been ordered to pay child support for the kid. In Texas, it is revealed that the judge who was exposed for beating the crap out of his daughter on YouTube last year continued to receive $49,000 during the first 4 months of his suspension. And finally, tonight in Ohio, a cop tases a 9-year-old and the mayor shuts down the police department and takes away all of their weapons for 3 whole days. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK, over and out.